this morning, not about the ongoing terror situations around the world, but about November's election. Why isn't he looking toward Inauguration Day instead of looking back? Joining us now with the Bottom Line, senior congressional correspondent for the Washington Examiner and host of the Examining Politics podcast, David Drucker. Let's put up the tweets. One he wrote, then he deleted. He seems to be watching whatever is going on this morning about the Electoral College and she lost the election. The only thing he hasn't mentioned is, which would be true, is that she had more faithless electors than he ultimately did in the Electoral College. But why can't he let this go, these ideas of the legitimacy of his win?
I'm not sure, Chris. And I think, though, I've kind of come to this conclusion about Donald Trump and his tweeting, that whatever he's tweeting about on any given day, the story is somewhere else. And so while it all makes sense in terms of the president-elect's focus on his legitimacy and the prowess of his campaign skills over the course of these last 2 years that we've followed him, since he won the election November 8th, and I've sort of watched the tweeting continue, most of the time I think that whatever he's tweeting about, and of course as journalists, we're trained to treat everything that the president says and does as important, and look, a lot of times it is, but I've kind of come to the conclusion, if he's saying this, the story is somewhere else over here.
Aha! So, if that's the model, if this is the shiny bauble that we're supposed to chase this way, what is it that we're being distracted from today?
Well, it could be a lot. I mean, number one, we're dealing with some of the activities surrounding his inauguration, some of the ways in which people around him are trying to raise money and present access to him as president. By the way, this would be nothing new. This is what politicians do. You need to raise money to keep a political organization up and running. If you're not raising money, somebody else is. We pay a lot of attention to it because Trump said he would do things differently. He's not necessarily going to be that kind of politician, but I almost think it's better if he does things normally. Because if he wants to be successful, if he wants his party to be successful, they're going to have to raise money, and you're going to have to deal with a lot of people in Washington that many voters might think are unsavory, but they're the smartest people in town when it comes to running a government. Now, the other issue is just simply, how his administration, as it is forming, is going to deal with a lot of these issues that are happening overseas.
Well, maybe a little too deep. I think his primary distraction is that he got crushed in the popular vote, and he doesn't like that.
Sticking up, and we shouldn't be reporting it.
Lead keeps getting bigger and bigger, and he does, and that bothers him. Okay, but it is what it is, and the election's over. I also think that this other distraction is something we've been picking up on this morning, which is the reporting that is real about them getting caught trying to make money off selling access to the president. Those are real documents that were formed down there in Texas. I've never heard of a draft invitation that sets out a donation schedule before. And what Newt Gingrich is saying, what sound can we play? Because
I'll just read it. Newt Gingrich just gave an interview to NPR in which he says that the president-elect no longer likes the phrase drain the swamp. I'm told he just disclaims that. He now says it was cute, but he doesn't want to use it anymore, David.
And Newt said that the president has the power to pardon his kids in advance, in effect saying they can do no wrong no matter what happens. Newt Gingrich suggesting something like that. Mr. Drucker.
Yeah, well, look, I think Newt's an interesting character, and obviously he has a lot of experience in using his position as a former Speaker of the House and the reputation he built up as a thinker and historian from his time in the limelight for furthering his post-office political endeavors. So he's very familiar with this stuff. Look, here's how this stuff works. Donald Trump is, in a sense, although he acts unconventionally, is really functioning like every other politician. There are some things here that are different, and one of them is that he has such extensive business holdings, including a brand new shiny hotel here in Washington, that even if he does nothing, even if he never encourages people to stay there, they're going to do it anyway so that they can drop in meetings with either administration officials or Republicans in Congress that, I'm at the Trump Hotel, it's so great. Everybody's looking for an advantage. Ultimately, how voters are going to judge the president, the new president, is whether their lives are better. And if their lives are better, honestly, they're not going to care if he's robbing them blind out of their own piggy bank. If their lives aren't better, they're going to look at every flaw that has nothing to do with whether or not it's his fault or not, and they're going to decide he's fallen down on the job, and they're going to nail him for it. And that's just how this works.
I get it, but why would he move away from Drain the Swamp? His supporters and voters like that.
You're right, Allison, because he can't govern that way. I mean, it's a cute phrase. We heard this from President Obama, just not with that phrasing. When he ran for office, we've heard this from a lot of politicians of both parties. Drain the swamp, lobbyists are bad, money is bad. Then they get it here, and they realize, number one, lobbyists used to work in government. They are the smartest people in town. If you want to run an effective government, if you want to pass an infrastructure bill, if you want to do tax reform, all of these things, you're going to need the help of the dreaded lobbyist. If you want to win re-election, if you want to protect your party in the midterm elections to further your agenda that people voted for you for, you're going to need to raise money because that's how politics works. It costs money. And so they get here and they either realize it or they knew it all along. And the truth is, a lot of voters realize or have decided, for better or worse, that Washington isn't the most pristine place to do business. They'll look past it.
All right, so you have political reality. That's fine. And there's salesmanship in politics. We get that. But what Newt Gingrich just said about the president having the ability to pardon his kids in advance, to say anything that comes up out of their conflicts of interest, anything that's wrong, anything that's arguably even illegal, they should be forgiven and held harmless in advance. Could you imagine the hypocrisy that should fall on Newt Gingrich's shoulders after everything he said about Hillary Clinton and about, the integrity of government?
I think that it's the exact sort of thing that Newt Gingrich would say. I don't think it's anything that this administration would do. And if his kids, who are going to be his closest advisors and are going to be de facto members of the administration within the White House, whether they're given some sort of formal title and they get around nepotism laws or not, if they do anything seriously wrong, it will cause the president-elect a problem. And especially as you head into the next election if people are not quite satisfied with how things are going. And I think one of the reasons we saw a pullback and we hear this faux story about, it's just a draft, is because they recognize that it was bad publicity. Newt Gingrich says this sort of stuff all the time. I take it with a grain of salt just because, one minute he'll say this and then the next minute he'll say something else. And it's just the way Newt Gingrich looks at government. And it's, I think one of the reasons why possibly he didn't end up in the administration is I don't think that Trump needs a free agent like Newt out there.
But it's just so telling. You got these, chattering class people on TV, especially in the morning, going after what Bill Clinton said and what the president-elect say, but they don't talk about this with Newt Gingrich. It just lets you know what the pundits care about. They care about this inside minutia BS, but this kind of thing that would be an assault on a constitutional power, they ignore.
And they shouldn't. They should not.
All right. Well, we're talking about it, and I believe Chris has revealed what he cares about. Let us know what you...
Constitution?
David, thank you very much. Let us know what you care about. Do you like the idea of draining the swamp? You can tweet us. Meanwhile, one of the world's top tennis players is lucky to be alive after coming under attack in her own home. Do police think she was targeted? And what will it take to get her back out on tour?
Kvitova, two-time Wimbledon.